that introduction, John. It's the most dangerous area. Housing, obviously, quite a hot topic in Malmesbury at the moment. But we were looking at very specific aspects. We weren't looking at provision of new housing. We were looking at delivery of affordable housing, prevention of homelessness, rural housing, making best use of existing affordable housing stock, and fuel poverty, particularly in the private sector. Now, this may be a dangerous area or not, but it was certainly a very complex one to discuss. And we would like to thank Lindsay Megson from Wiltshire Council for her assistance. I don't think we'd have made so much progress without her. The actions that we came up with, we did find to be interchangeable in between those 5 or 6 different sectors. So if we looked at affordable housing, so that's access to affordable housing, and the definition of affordable housing would be housing owned by a social landlord. We looked at, number 1, use of the neighbourhood planning process as being key, relating local need for affordable housing to the housing that's actually provided in the area. The other key issue we thought was the nature of the tenancy agreements for social housing, for affordable housing. At present, the understanding is that any allocation is an allocation for life. So once a family moves in, the family has the right to housing for life. But there's a new development whereby social housing is allocated on a 5-year renewable term. And then we felt that there should be an encouragement on behalf of the council that any affordable housing provision is on a 5-year term basis. And also to assess where a tenancy agreement is in place for life, whether there's the opportunity for voluntary and appropriate reallocation of housing. So once, for example, a family has moved on and there's 1 or 2 people left in the house, whether that large house could be more appropriately allocated. Sensitive issue, would have to be appropriate and voluntary. Rural housing, access to rural housing. One key issue was improved communication between Wiltshire Council New Housing Department and Wiltshire Council's Planning Department. A case was quoted whereby the planners decided there was no proven need for social housing in a particular area and the planning application was refused, whereas the local community felt there was a need. So improved communication between those 2 departments. We're also introduced to the concept of off-site S106 agreements. So the Section 106 agreement relates to new housing developments. Any new housing development above a certain size legally has to have 30% affordable housing. But there's a chance that we could then, on top of that, using an S106 agreement, an off-site S106 agreement, allocate funding from that agreement into a central fund to support provision of affordable housing elsewhere within the county. We also looked at fuel poverty, and that's fuel poverty really applying to private housing. There's a very high proportion of fuel poverty within the private housing sector within Wiltshire, within the community area. One improvement was education and clarity on the grant schemes that are available to improve home insulation, etc. Looking very carefully at the energy efficiency of any new builds within the community area to make them as energy efficient as possible to avoid any future fuel poverty. Education on energy usage. And a key one as well was social connection, to avoid the situation where an elderly person on their own in a house, people are aware that perhaps she is in fuel poverty but aren't doing anything about it, and just the whole community pulling together to raise awareness of that particularly vulnerable part of the population. And finally then, best use of housing stock. And that again is looking at the affordable housing stock, and that really, we went back to the first point, and that's looking hard at the tenancy agreements and use of 5-year tenancy terms as opposed to tenancy terms for life. So it's a very complex issue, but I think we came up with some good conclusions from it. Thank you.